History is not certain about who lit the fuse, but the strike organizers were blamed and executed. So this is the legacy of May 1st, and maybe like you feel a little overwhelmed by that information and its intensity. But there is hope there. 4 years later, May 1st became an official commemoration for this movement, the labor movement, and did eventually win us an 8-hour workday. So May 1st is now not a day for mourning, but a day for celebration, of solidarity, for a renewal of desires, and a commitment to making things better. I am inspired by strikes and protests and refusing to accept something that is wrong. For the last year, I've been working with images from the teacher strikes, researching the ephemera of labor, and trying to put them together in a way that will make sense in an artistic way. With a lot of trial and error, I have settled with all this stuff that you see, especially this wall back here. This piece I've called Strike Anywhere. It's a series of screen prints we pasted onto the wall. I use images I've collected from online research. I'm interested in the relationship between image and information being spread by new media and the multiplicity inherent in printmaking. I chose images that would show the critical mass of each teacher strike while emphasizing the unique characteristics of each strike in each state, like the umbrellas and the multilingual signs carried by teachers in Los Angeles, the hand-printed signs by teachers in Oakland. Many of these images are from 2018 to 2019, but I also included some from previous decades, the 30s, 60s, and the 90s, where teachers had previously gone on strike. The repetition of printmaking is emphasized. The process underlines the repetition of strikes themselves, happening in each state in succession, but also through time. Much like the printing process, teacher strikes happen over and over. While thinking about teachers, I began to think about the classroom, its role as a community, and its function as a place for critical discourse. In the book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, the author Paulo Freire states that education is always changing, and to be, it must become. In my thesis work, I look at critical pedagogy in two ways, as the labor of teachers, but as a living thing that students also participate in. Thank you. Yeah, reading on the paper, that felt a lot more formal, but I'd love to take any questions if anyone has any.
How did you determine the colorway for the screen prints and the pattern that you used to place them onto the wall?
That is a great question.
Thanks.
So glad you asked it. So the screen print color palette was chosen to coincide with the color palette of these soft sculpture crayons, which themselves are color-coded to different things that relate to either labor activism, strikes, or student-led protests. So one thing that I do like to point out, because it's a little bit of magic that Libby said might happen, one of the things I've been looking at is a thing called the umbrella revolution that happened in Hong Kong, where people used umbrellas to shield themselves from tear gas getting thrown at them. And that was like a really neat relationship with the umbrellas that teachers carried in the Los Angeles strikes, because it was raining. And the pattern for the screen printed wall, it was kind of one of those things where that was sort of like I thought of it. And I've always been kind of like, I've always tended towards like a repetition of pattern and bold colors and shapes, like flat shapes. And so I just like said now's not the time to question that choice, and I went with it. And because I started working in textiles, and the way fabric is woven together with a warp and a weft, and each thread is visible but creates a whole, I liked the relationship that it started to create with this pattern as I was working on it.
Lizzie, can you talk about hand making things that are ordinarily mass produced and the thoughts behind that, like the crayons or the graph paper?
Yeah, at first for me it was meaningful to put that labor in as an artist if I'm talking about labor, and that kind of became overshadowed a bit by the fact that people have, when viewing it, sometimes don't recognize that it's as laborious as it is, and when they realize it, it makes the viewing experience so much more pleasurable for people, and I like to watch it happen too, so it's kind of like joyful, and I feel like my work is definitely aimed at making people feel that way. Yeah.
Any other questions from Libby?
That wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.